All right, my favorite people, and today what we're going to jump into is how to compute and estimate your repair costs. I get this question over and over and just want to take it from different angles, so you'll definitely want to stay to the end to get those insights. All right, my favorite people, you know the next steps. Hit that subscribe button as well as the notification bell. Those of you who are on the YouTube, and then of course those of you who are on other channels listening while you're in the shower, brushing your teeth, and washing up. Once you get out the shower, leave that rating. It would really mean the world. And then every Tuesday and Thursday, I drop this content, so be sure to add that in your calendar. And earlier, I just got done with a back workout in glutes. And there's this one particular workout that I actually do, that's the hip thrusters. And what you do is you lay on the bench and then you put the barbell across your waist and then you thrust up. And I've had these awkward these awkward eye contacts with other people as I'm thrusting. So comment below if that has ever happened to you. The awkward eye contact and eye stare with the person on the other end as you're doing the hip thrusting up and down. So I try actually to not look at anyone, but occasionally do lock eyes with someone. But I digress. Let's go ahead and jump right into things. And just a little context on myself. If you're just now coming across me, name is Sterling White, buy and hold investor. Born and raised in Indianapolis, Indiana, and that's where majority of my holdings are. Started in single families, scaled up to 150 single families, and then in 2017 started buying apartments, with the first deal being a 46 unit, and then scaled portfolio to just under 500 units. So one thing is, I'm not perfect. I still make mistakes to this day, and I share those mistakes, the trials and tribulations, in hopes that you can avoid the pitfalls and mistakes that I've made and just replicate the successes. So let's go ahead and jump into point number one with estimating your repair costs. Is the first thing you'll want to understand is your market and or neighborhood, and also your demographics, because depending on which model that you're using is whether you're flipping and you're selling it to a retail buyer, or let's say you're doing the buy and hold method, is you don't want to run into the common mistake that I see people make, is they will put in granite countertops to let's say a rental unit for a lower income demographic. Because one, if you're putting in all granite countertops, you're really not going to get a justifiable rent increase for putting in that upgrade that you have versus just going with Formica countertops, for instance. So that's a prime example. Is you want to do your research in the market, neighborhood, and demographic, and understand who your end user is, and that will help you have a good some context on, okay, these are the types of renovations that I'm going to add to the property. So a typical renovation that you'll see, and again, this it does vary upon market, is, let's say it's an older property built in 1970s. That you'll see, you'll go in there and you'll upgrade the paint scheme, because normally it's a little bit older, to modern, which is gray on the base, white on the trim. Very similar what you see on the paint scheme. For those who visually can see me, is gray. I have gray wall behind me and then white on the trim, and then you can go in and put vinyl plank flooring, and then replace all the countertops and resurface the cabinetry, and then you can make updates to the bathroom depending on how updated in your market as well. So that's just a prime example of just understanding the market and demographic, and then from there is you make the renovations to that and avoid and this is another common mistake I see people make, is making the upgrades to the unit or property as if they're going to live into it, and they put too much into it. So that's definitely something that you'll want to go ahead and put a note on, because I see that issue over and over. So that's the first point. And then the second is to check the property. There we go. Thoroughly. So during your walkthrough, let's say you're now officially in the due diligence period, is to walk the property thoroughly, especially And this is a pro tip, is to have a contractor with you, because the very first deal that I was working through, and this was before I actually even acquired a deal, was I attempted to wholesale. I did wholesale single families, but the very first deal that I absolutely butchered is I walked in to this house and had no clue exactly. It seemed fine. I remember the seller was vacuuming. I walked through it. Carpet seemed fine, paint seemed fine, and then I sent it out to all the cash buyers after taking video and then also pictures, and they said, "Hey, did you consider the mechanicals? And also, I'm actually going to have to make these types of renovations." And I didn't take those into consideration when I actually provided the offer to the seller. So from there is I had to go back and renegotiate, and then we went back and forth, and then finally they had accepted it. They accepted the offer and then went to Burger King. Yes, asked them to meet at Burger King and was going over the contract. And I absolutely had butchered it because it sounded as if I was an absolute rookie, which I was. And then they got cold feet and left. So one is having a contractor walk through it with you. Yes, you can go out there, read books, learn all the costs with, okay, if the cost to buy a window is $150, $175, or $200, and this varies upon market. And then the cost to install could be $100, $150, depending on what the contractor. So you can understand all those costs, but you have to consider, what is the best use of your time? Would you consider that lower value to understand all these costs, or would you consider that the highest activity that will actually drive your business? You want to understand the cost to a T, but learning all those costs, because that was a mistake that I made, and it came to a point where we just brought someone onto our team that had extensive experience, and we relied on their expertise. So that's the second, is you'll want to inspect the property thoroughly. One red flag for myself personally when I'm walking through a property is if it has foundational issues. That is an automatic walk away for myself personally. Some people are willing to take that on, but if I walk up to a property and it is slooping, or it's not foundationally sound, you'll know a property when you look at it and it looks as if it's tilting. That is an underlying foundational issue, and those can get very costly very fast. So that's the second point. And now the third point is to determine what your actual rehab number is going to be. And hopefully, I would say as a pro tip that you've had a contractor help you, or someone who has extensive experience in the construction side that will help you formulate that, okay, this is going to be the average, this is going to be the cost to turn all these units. And this is one thing that I leverage with our property management company, is I reached out to them and said, hey, not counting replacing the roof, the electrical, the plumbing, is if there is a unit in this condition, which is outdated because we purchase properties that are the 1970s to 1980s built, and I want to make the unit more modern, what is going to be your average cost to do the two-tone paint scheme, vinyl plank flooring throughout, replacing the countertops with Formica? And they turned around and said, okay, this is going to be your average cost on a unit that's about 800 to 900 square footage. You're going to range between, and this is just the interior renovations alone, is going to be 75 to about 8,500, and I still even put a buffer on top of that. So now you understand those costs, and we'll roll into point number 4, which is now you'll be able to take that and formulate your offers based upon that. But just going back to step number 4 is just breaking down everything that is needed to be replaced and repaired, and then from there is to put a number on it, because, and this is another common mistake that I do see people make, is they don't have these breakdown on costs. And how can you formulate an offer and buy a deal without knowing this? How do you know what your return on investment is going to be? Because now you're going to buy this property and you're going to be making those repairs as you go, and now you actually may be losing money on the deal and not even realizing it. So there's that. On number 3 is to break down on a line by line item of what needs to be repaired and what needs to be upgraded, and then put a number on it. Contractor will help with this. And then the fourth is now to rerun your numbers. So on the front end, you've done your initial underwriting, and sometimes you'll be able to actually walk through some of the units on the property, or walk the entire property. And however, some owners and sellers will not allow that until you actually go under contract. So those are some things to keep in mind on the front end. But let's say you've made these assumptions and you said that I'm going to put, let's say, $1 million into this property on a per unit basis, including the interior as well as the exterior work that needs to be done. From there is you put that into it, and then you increase the rents by $100. Is now doing your inspection, and when you're thoroughly walking the property, is now you are confirming your assumptions on the front end. So hopefully you put enough buffer on the front end. That way you don't go under contract and then you have to renegotiate, which is another word for retrading. Retrading, which is another word for renegotiating. That's what you'll hear in the commercial space. So is one, on the front end, to do as much as you can as far as due diligence in your assumptions. That way you can avoid at a later point having to renegotiate. So one, just don't be light, because it's likely that, especially if it's an older property, that you'll have to go in and you'll see that, okay, it needs this, it needs this, it needs this, and then you still want to put a buffer on top of that because it's just an older property. And it's likely, just from personal experience, that you'll be surprised by things that you have to address as far as repairs. So just going through the 4 items is one, understand your market, neighborhood, and demographic, and that will allow you to now back into the type of repairs and or renovations that are needed to the property. Let's say you're flipping to a retail buyer. Is in that case is you can get insights from an agent that knows that market and that demographic that you're selling to. Rely on other people's expertise. I see so many people that go out there and try to do it all on your own. Yes, you can go ahead and do that. Best of wishes with that, and that'll just end up you'll experience more mistakes because you're trying to put all these different hats on. There are professionals out there that you can partner with in team. It's about a team effort. The second is to check the property thoroughly. Pro tip is having a contractor with you that'll walk through it. The next is determine a rehab price, as far as a breakdown on the line by line on each of what is needed. And then the fourth is just rerunning your numbers just to confirm your assumptions that you've made on the front end. So yeah, we'd love to hear from you all. Is go ahead and comment below. Is when you are walking through properties, do you have a contractor with you? Or are you the one that does it, or do you do it yourself? So I appreciate you all so much. And don't forget, those of you on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and notification bell. That way you can be informed moving forward. And then those of you who are on other platforms, leave that rating. It would really mean the world. And then also just below, there's a link to schedule a strategy session with myself, either or someone on a team, which is likely it's going to be with myself, where we further understand where you're currently at, where you're looking to go, and how to be able to bridge the gap to get there. So looking forward to speaking with you. Keep being awesome. All right.